Karren has the special privilege of following up on a
Right, in 15 minutes, too. Let's see how we can do this.
heated conversation. But you get to hold the floor yourself.
All right.
So on that, we talk about this tension that still seems to exist in communities, and your organization, and why we are in fact having this conversation here in LA today is because we are coming up on the 25th anniversary of a time of crisis in this community. Mm-hmm. As we look to that, has your organization and other organizations that are active in South Central LA, have you seen a better time? Are things really better?
So next year will be the 25th anniversary of the '92 Civil Rebellion in South Los Angeles. And so I think when we look back, one, our measure of success has to be measured by the investment in the communities, the families, the individuals that live in those communities. What I will say, because we have such a short period of time, the progress we have seen has been a direct result of organized communities. Everyday residents in the neighborhoods, despite perceptions around our families, our young people, the continued criminalization and critique of our people, people themselves that live in South Los Angeles and poor and working communities across this nation. It has been because organized residents have fought to hold the government accountable, have themselves instituted and implemented community-based strategies to violence and crime that do not rely on suppression. I think of the Miss Fannies, the Virgie Walkers, the Dr. Cox, people who have invested their lives, given their bodies to bring community together in order to improve conditions in the community, and again, to hold the system accountable and to indict the system for the conditions that exist in South Los Angeles and communities of color across this nation. Because of that work for the last 40 years, since mass incarceration and war on drugs, we have seen organized bodies organize the vote. We've changed the electorate in California through the work of California Calls. And
the conversation, in fact, that we just had. As we talk about sentencing, as we talk about incarceration in the state?
That's been the direct result of organized residents coming together themselves in grassroots and base-building organizations that have activated new and occasional voters in their neighborhoods, that has created the conditions for us to pass legislation like Prop 30 and Prop 47. And activists and advocates will leverage that work again when we enter this next election cycle around Prop 57. That's been the progress over the last 25 years, is the organizing that is happening every day in South Los Angeles to address the conditions and the issues that are impacting the families that live there.
And we actually had intended for you to be partnered with a representative of Black Lives Matter in this community. Unfortunately, at the last minute, he wasn't able to join us. Your organization doesn't necessarily believe everything that Black Lives Matter is doing is the way you would do it. Yet and still, what this is about is voices of the community coming out and making that change happen.
So, Community Coalition is certainly a partner and ally to the Black Lives Matter movement. We consider ourselves a part of that movement. And in this moment, and in any movement, there takes different tactics and strategies in order to really dismantle the system. Again, this is about indicting the system, not indicting the people that are being impacted by a system. So I think what often has, part of the narrative that is incorrect is that there's just one way to approach the work. And so, yes, we are fully in support of the work that Black Lives Matter is doing. It's been because of their again, willing to sacrifice their bodies to call out contradictions in California and in Los Angeles around our chief, who has one of the highest rates of police shootings under his reign, because of them occupying City Hall and because of them occupying police commission
Did that protest make a difference?
I think it absolutely made a difference, and whether people want to acknowledge that or not, the two recent appointments to the police commission, I believe, is a direct result of those young people and the activists in Black Lives Matter occupying City Hall, occupying commission meetings, calling out the contradiction that a body that's supposed to represent civilians holds its meeting at LAPD in the morning, so it's not accessible to residents. So again, what we've seen and the progress that we've seen in moving the needle has been because Black and brown folks are organizing and consolidating their political power to put pressure on the system to be responsive to the needs of those communities that they live in.
You made a specific and in that, black and brown folks. This unification, this is really important to that activism.
Absolutely. I mean, Community Coalition was founded intentionally as a black and brown organization. We share a community. Again, it's not just about, oh, do we love each other and all that. It's about consolidating political power and dismantling, now let's call it out because I haven't heard it, white supremacy, right? I mean, black oppression, white supremacy can only exist if there's black oppression. And so how do we build a strong enough political bloc and power to dismantle it? And it will take a variety of tactics. It will take folks running for elected office. It'll take ballot initiatives. It will take sit-ins and marches. It'll take people providing direct services. It will take a variety of tactics and strategies for us actually to dismantle white supremacy and dismantle systems, our education system, criminal justice system that is not serving the people of Los Angeles.
So how should that anniversary be commemorated?
I think we intend, and I'm sure many people in this room will be a part of that effort, we intend to lift the visibility of that debate and that narrative, for us to continue to push the envelope of what we want to see, the type of public systems we want to see, the type of neighborhoods that we want to see. We will continue to push for more investment into our communities and behind the community-based strategies that address violence and crime and addiction, and that address the issues that are impacting us.
Voices in the room who want to talk about what you can do to make a difference. Do you have specific suggestions to them, and does anybody have any questions about that?
So as I look at this room, I see all my fellow activists who are doing organizing throughout Los Angeles.
You got friends here.
So I'm certain that folks have ideas around solutions, but I think in this moment, we're in a very special moment. We're in a critical moment, and I think although we get frustrated about very archaic and narrow analysis of the conditions that we live in, we are actually in a very powerful position. We are in an offensive position, and I think for many decades, the movement has been in a defensive position, but we are actually positioned to push the envelope even further than we've done over the last 30 years. And so what I would encourage people to continue to do is dig your heels in and continue to push. In this audience, I would be amiss, because I know my time is almost up. I think it's also about pushing for more investment in that organizing work, in the grassroots organizing work that's being led by black and brown folks, both from the public institution as well as private foundations. Is there enough investments in the actual organizing that's taking place? I would argue that it's not. And so when we think about, again, placing a lot of the responsibility back on the community itself, it's also charging and indicting private foundations, public institutions to invest in the solutions that the community has identified as the ones that will address the conditions.
And holding power to account. In the last few weeks, as those who protested at City Hall, I mean, they had very specific demands for the mayor. They did not win them all.
No, and I think the value that is ties across all of the demands, whether it be from Black Lives Matter, Community Coalition, Scope, or any organization, is how do we get the government to work with the people, right? And so many of those demands, moving commission meetings to the evening so people can participate, is all about involving the most impacted community in the solution. And that's the value that ties all of our work together. I think it's very convenient to talk about the black and brown experience from a very academic position, but and oftentimes we're asked to come and share our stories in order to pull out on the hearts and minds of folks. But very, very, very often, even from the most progressive of liberal of organizations, do they value our ideas about the solution? Do they value our leadership and actually bringing in those solutions? And so, that ties, those demands have existed for decades. We know what we need in our community, and we know what the problems are. And so investing in leadership of black and brown communities is critical.
Voices in the audience. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, one of the big questions I have, and this goes back to the conversation before is about money. And I feel you keep talking about investment, and I think that there is so much money around, and somebody's making a lot of money, and it just breaks my heart when I hear about organizations that are doing such powerful work that are trying to raise $5,000. And there are people, and the prison system is based in a lot of the private sector, isn't that correct at this point? So, for example, you talk about
Some privatization,
investment. I don't know how to reach those people with money, but there's so much out there, and it feels like that's a question I have. How do you get people who have all that money to pay attention in the way you need them to pay attention?
So I think that's something that we all continue to challenge around. I mean, I think what's for lack of a better word, pissifying about this last panel is the idea that
That would be hashtag.
folks are going to wait until they get resources to make those changes in their community. It's completely false, right? There are everyday grandmothers, aunties, uncles on the corners leading peace marches, doing interventions. There are gang interventions on a daily basis. Some of them get grid funding, but a whole lot of them don't. OGs who are coming out of the prison system that are putting their lives, their bodies between a bullet in order to increase peace. So when we talk about violent crime, violence in South Los Angeles has actually decreased over the last 20 years. Now, it won't be attributed to Community Coalition, to gang intervention in scope, or many of the other residents themselves that knock on doors and hold house meetings and do personal visits. They won't be attributed with that success. But when people get the opportunity to critique the movement around Black Lives Matter, they want to point to community violence. But they never recognize and acknowledge the hard work, the sweat, blood, and tears that everyday activists without resources. So even though there is a need to invest in that work, it's not as though we're not working. It's not as though we're not working to deal with community violence. And so my answer, we're still trying to figure that out, but I assure you, the 900,000 people in South Los Angeles, they will be activated. And they'll be activated in this election. They'll be activated around community violence. They'll be activated about redirecting our money from prisons into our schools and our young people, regardless if we get 50 cents from a private foundation or the city of Los Angeles.
All right. Come on, let's hear it.
Hello.
Sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Aaron Bratton. I'm a third-year law student at Pepperdine. And what I've noticed, I'm taking a different approach to it. I'm trying to do mandatory curriculum at my school, Pepperdine. What I've noticed was that the Constitution might be the problem. Have you guys heard of gaslighting? So what I think is happening is that the Constitution was written by 55 delegates, rich white men, and from the get-go, day one of this country, poor people were oppressed, black people were oppressed, and women were oppressed. So you could put women plus justice up there too. So the point being, 300 years, 200 years, 100 years, nothing has changed. Black people are still complaining about racism, and women are still complaining about sexism. So what I kind of think is, ignorant people made the Constitution. The people who were the delegates were brilliant, but they didn't think women were equal. They didn't think black people were equal. And that's what set this country down the path. And so I'm trying to make it a curriculum where they learn about racism and sexism, but it's mandatory because it's an elective class right now, and nobody takes it. So the sexism class, the domestic violence class, is 25 people in it. 20 are women, and 5 are men. And in the critical race class, it's all black people in there, all the black lawyers. So what do you think about making it for law students and MBAs, business schools, JD programs, a push to make mandatory curriculum to know about the true history of this country and the contributions from women and contributions from black people?
How about journalists?
I mean, I think as a mother to a kindergartner who is deathly afraid of what will be part of the curriculum during November, I completely applaud any effort to tell the real story of this country and of this world and the reality of globalization, white supremacy, and racism, and how much that's a part of the fabric of this country. And so I would applaud any effort to increase people's understanding of really what the history of this nation has been.
I believe we have reached past our time. Thank you all for your part. Thank you. Thank you.